of the departments, professors of SRM IST, invited participants across geographies, ladies and gentlemen. A hearty welcome to all of you to this 3-day virtual international conference on accelerating global higher education in the VUCA Prime World, Session 1, organized by College of Science and Humanities, SRM Institute of Science and Technology, Ramapuram, Chennai. May I now request Dr. N. Ashokan, Vice Principal Academics and Conference Secretary, to say a few words about the conference. So, over to you.
Thank you, sir. Very good evening to each one of you present today. I bid a very warm welcome to all the renowned speakers and delegates who took out their valuable time and join us today to be part of this 3-day virtual international conference on accelerating global higher education in the VUCA Prime World, today, tomorrow, and day after tomorrow. We are honored to have you all with us. Two terms come to mind in framing the context of today's world: response and recovery, creative destruction. We continue to grapple with the COVID-19 pandemic, confront ongoing natural disasters, and respond to a range of other crises like digital disruption on daily basis, changes in business model once in 3 months, climate change, rise in sea level, cybercrime for fast few years, and navigate an increasingly polarized political landscape or directly or indirectly affects our classroom and global higher education. So in this context, there is a need and incredible urgency around creating a higher education system that can serve the diverse needs of families, put students at the center of their learning, and offer multiple pathways beyond classroom education. So global higher education is at a critical juncture of opportunity and growth, coupled with the changing demands and changes. This 3-day conference will discuss about how the educational administrators and educational leaders will handle the 4 attributes, namely vision, understanding, clarity, and agility, to take the informed, very important educational decisions. So it gives me an immense pleasure to start this auspicious occasion by heartily welcoming everyone. My heartfelt warm welcome to our Dr. B. Venkatachalapathy, Dean Research, SRM Group of Institutions, Ramapuram and Trichy Campus, Chennai, India. Welcoming you, sir. I am profoundly delighted to take an opportunity to welcome the keynote speaker, Mr. Lachlan McKinnon, CEO and Principal, at Cambridge International School from Dubai. I am extremely delighted to welcome Mr. Sridharan Sampath, Chief Executive Officer, Aspiring Training Consultancy, Fujairah, UAE. My heartfelt warm welcome to our a warm welcome to our, it's a great pleasure in welcoming Dr. Umar Raghunathan, Chief Technical Officer and Directorate of Knowledge Management in Agriculture, New India, Delhi. It gives me immense pleasure in welcoming Mr. Raja P. Arumugam, Chief Administrative Officer, Syria, Office of the Special Envoy for Syria, United Nations from Geneva. I am very much delighted to welcome our Dean Science and Humanities, Dr. Sundar, SRM IST Ramapuram, who is always our inspiration and guiding post in every activity. We do that every day. A warm welcome to all the head of the department and faculties of SRM IST. I am very much delighted to extend my warm welcome to very enthusiastic participants from all over the world. I guarantee that the conference will be productive and worth your precious time. Thank you to each and every one of you for being here with us today evening. Have a meaningful and constructive learning. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. It was a wonderful welcome address. I'm highly delighted to call upon our Dean Research, Dr. Venkatachalapathy, sir, to felicitate the gathering. Sir, over to you.
So you are on mute, sir.
Okay. Good evening, good morning, and namaskar to all the participants from India and around the globe. First of all, I like to congratulate and thank our College of Science and Humanities, SRM IST, for choosing a most relevant topic for this 3-day virtual conference on VUCA Prime World. To be very honest, I have learned about this word VUCA only after they have given me the invitation. After looking at this VUCA word, I'm really, really excited. And this conference, it is very interesting topic, which will be applicable to all the sectors, across all the sectors, whatever, what you call the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity is applicable to all the industries. As mentioned by the conference convener, Dr. Ashokan, that too, the time where now the whole world is affected by COVID-19, it has not, no country is being exempted from that. It is playing its role, and this will give a very, very important 3-day conference you can discuss on. And specifically, very specifically, it is relevant to the education sector, because education sector is the one which builds the future world. So from there it starts, and it is very, very important. Learning about the VUCA world, I have seen the curiosity is the word, which is very important, which shows the ability to learn fast. So that is the order of the day. No, we have to learn fast, adapt quickly, and we have to be, as it is being defined, it is learning quickly is a prerequisite for the VUCA world. So this, I hope the conference organizers have chosen eminent personalities around the world to talk about this very important topic, and also very useful topic for education. I hope all the participants will get benefited, and hopefully this will be a useful 3-day virtual conference. I once again thank Dean Science and Humanities, Vice Principal Dr. Ashokan, and all the team members for organizing a conference. As I said earlier, I understood about the importance of VUCA world only because of your conference. Thank you so much. Have a nice time for this 3 days. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir, that you have found time out of your busy schedule to be here for us, and it demonstrates your unwavering commitment to our cause. We are most grateful.
Thank you, sir.
It's time to unfold the horizon and realize the importance of VUCA Prime World in today's scenario. May I now request Mrs. T. Kanimari to take an important role to introduce our distinguished speaker of session 1, Mr. Lachlan McNaughton, CEO, Principal, Cambridge International School, Dubai. Over to you, ma'am. Hi, sir.
Good evening, one and all present here. Mr. Lachlan McNaughton, CEO, Principal, Cambridge International School, Dubai. Mr. Lachlan has an education qualification of B.Ed, M.Ed, and MBA. Mr. Lachlan has more than 25 years of progressively responsible experience in education, working in the private and public sectors in Australia, UK, Middle East, and Africa. Currently, he is the CEO, Principal of Cambridge International School, Dubai. Prior to commencing this role, he was a CEO, Principal of James Westminster School, Ras Al Khaimah. He has served as the Program Director for the Rocky Gems Foundation. As the Director, he was overseeing institutional leadership program to 250,000 million peoples across Africa with tactical teams on the ground. This program is ongoing and has improved the academic lives of over 1 million students. Lachlan was also employed by ADC in the management decisions, where he worked strategically with respect to delivering a new curriculum
Sir, please, sir.
thinking about fundamental change within his associated schools. A large portion of his advisory role was to coach and mentor existing principals and leadership teams to develop a modern pedagogy and leadership skills. Policy formation, along with the provision of advice and support on developing strategic plans, was also played an integral part in his understanding. We cordially invite you for the session, sir. Welcome, sir.
Namaste. Thank you very much.
We, SRM IST Ramapuram fraternity, is highly privileged to honor you virtually, sir. Please accept our token of love and appreciation for your valuable presence.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Mr. McKinnon would be discussing on the topic administrating higher educational institution in the VUCA prime world. Over to you, sir.
Lovely. Thank you. I think I have to change that bio. That was really long. And it probably explains my years of experience in education. So yes, the VUCA prime world, and as my colleague said before, I've also just recently understood the word. So today though, I'm going to go and take you through something a little different, I think, after I've read the VUCA and VUCA prime. And it's more around the leadership structures and leadership, I think. So hopefully my story will sound for you and you might have some understanding from it. So as I already said, Lachlan McKinnon, CEO, Principal GEMS Education. I work in a school of over 2,700 students, English curriculum, FS to 13 in Dubai. And I'm pretty lucky. I have an awesome school. So yes, been in education for 30 years. However, I'm now speaking about a topic that, to be honest, I had not heard about until last week, just as my colleague has. And you know what? This sent me certainly into a VUCA event. You know, however, I was excited to learn something new. So accelerating global higher education in a VUCA prime world. So as I started my research, as one does, I started to form questions about what answers I wanted. Besides understanding what the acronym meant, VUCA and VUCA prime, and I'll assume all listening today know the VUCA acronym. So then questions came to light for me. How do we triumph in a VUCA event? How do we lead during a VUCA event? How do we behave in a VUCA prime world? So I'm hoping today I can bring some understanding to those questions and then how you can apply them to your own institution or business, not necessarily education. So over the last 15 years, I've had this ever-ending thirst for finding out more about leadership, that constant itch, that defining process, that crucial piece of the puzzle. You know what? And I've realized now that I'll never find that missing piece of the puzzle. You know, that the leadership piece that falls between the table and the floor in that void that sits there. We're ever going to be continuing it. So my thirst for this knowledge, as is yours, will never be quenched. Why? Because if you believe there is an endpoint, if you believe there is one defining moment, if you believe that knowledge is finite, then you will stop being a leader and you will stop being a learner. But that's why you're here today. As the famous philosopher Eric Hoffer said once, learners will inherit the earth, while the learned will be beautifully equipped for a world that no longer exists. So we need to keep that constant learning in front of us. Leadership, education is part of an infinite game of life. And when we focus forward and understand this, then great leadership will come. Great leadership will develop. However, it will never be one defining moment. It will never be one VUCA event. It will be thousands that will prepare you for the future. These events will define you, create you, become you. Now, as Bob Johansen said, the mother of VUCA Prime, the greatest strategists have a massive database of VUCA events to draw on that help them deal with VUCA events in the present day and looking at the possible future. So this year I had a few VUCA events myself, and they were terrifying but exhilarating. I jumped out of a plane and zip-lined, the longest zip line in the world. VUCA events in themselves. Was it a volatile environment and I needed the vision of my instructor, my leader, to help me through this? Yes, I did. Was it uncertain and I needed to understand the forces of gravity very quickly? Yes, I did. Was it complex and I needed clarity and focus from my instructor, my leader, who was in charge of what and where we were going? Yes, I did. And finally, was it ambiguous? Yes, indeed it was. And at this point, I was ready to be agile and adapt my approach to make sure the desired outcome to survive the jump was certainly there and experience the VUCA event in all its learning. And I'm glad to say I did, because here I am to prove it. Now, both events were VUCA and VUCA Prime events. My point is that VUCA events have not just started. The acronym VUCA is, as you know, been around since, 1985. That concept created by the American military to describe the fog of war, the chaotic positions and conditions that they encounter on the battlefield, or simply trying to walk out the front door when there's no umbrella and it's raining cats and dogs, or jumping out of a plane. These are VUCA events. So don't be afraid of the word. So I would argue that even though this definition is there, that does give us a framework to talk about. It has been there for thousands of years. Have you ever read The Art of Modern Warfare by Sun Tzu? Now that was written 2,000 years ago. Now Zhao just did not name his book The Art of VUCA. However, his theories help shape modern warfare, that fog of war, as he mentions, that occurs at VUCA events. You should read this book. There are many ways that he illustrates how to deal with VUCA events and behaviours we need to exhibit, not just in the moment, that we have to learn. VUCA events provides winners and losers. For example, the biggest extinction event in the world has ever seen, when the meteor hit the planet and the dinosaurs slowly found them as extinct. The losers, dinosaurs. The winners, smaller reptiles that survived and thrived. Let's look closer to our era. The Industrial Revolution, where workers, children, slaves, indigenous populations were the losers and the rich got richer. Now, even closer, the subprime crisis in America in 2007 that led the financial crisis in 2009. Again, people lost and people won. Now, most recently, COVID. People lost and people won, in particular technology companies. And I tell you what, to have shares in Zoom at the moment, I think I'd be very rich. So how have some people, how have some organizations, how have some companies excelled in these VUCA environments and some have not? So for some people, VUCA events is being in the right place at the right time with the right people. A good book to read about this is David and Goliath, or Outriders by Malcolm Gladwell. Some really interesting insights, how luck of being born in a particular year or a particular age or a particular VUCA event can benefit you and make you shine. Where the VUCA event created opportunities to succeed. However, there are still behaviours that one must have to take advantage of these events. And they are not behaviours that happen overnight. They are part of what we call this 20-mile march. Now, other people that have benefited from VUCA events, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Richard Branson, Thomas Edison, Mozart, and even the Beatles. Those aha moments, those VUCA events, that the moment when all the celestial planets aligned and brought their presence to the world. However, they were there because of hard work and opportunities that came to them, and they had the strength, the presence of mind, their behaviours focused on these opportunities. So the VUCA Prime, as introduced by Bob Johansson in 2007, is based on behaviours, how we think and how we behave. VUCA just describes the event. It is the behaviours we exhibit before, during and after that creates the environment for success or failure in a VUCA world, in any industry. So let's look at the behaviours of people that have weathered these storms of VUCA events. So let me tell you a story about two leaders and the VUCA events that they went through, and you might find some resonance in this. These two amazing, dedicated people, driven people, raced to the end of the world to be one of them into the most hostile environments, yet the most beautiful environments, the South Pole, Antarctica. However, it's also a tragic story with only one survivor. So the question is, are you an Amundsen or are you a Scott? Now, Amundsen and Scott were the two explorers, both amazing people racing to be first to the South Pole. However, both strategically prepared differently for VUCA events that would besiege them for months in an unforgiving land and an unforgiving landscape. So Amundsen began his preparations in his late 20s. First, he spent 2 months training to get his captain's master's certificate. So he knew how to sail. Makes sense. He sailed from Norway to Spain. Now, on his return trip, instead of sailing back, which would have been the easiest way, back to Norway, he cycled back to Norway, from Spain to Norway. I don't know how he did that, but he did it because he wanted to condition his body and his mind. He experimented eating dolphin. So he thought maybe if he got stranded, it might be a useful source of energy supply for him while he was stranded. He traveled and spent time with Eskimos, understanding how they survived, what they ate, how they dressed, how they moved around with the dogs. And he continued to train himself for every conceivable situation in this unique environment that he was now presented with. Now, if you have read Good to Great by Jim Collins, he talks about good leaders constantly fire bullets at the target, small bullets, simply experimenting on small things again and again and again. And then when they hit the target, they then send in the big cannons, the big balls, to the big resources in order to scale their product if you're in business or survive the storm. So Amundsen's philosophy was not to wait for the unexpected storm, but be prepared for it. You don't wait to be shipwrecked to determine if you can eat dolphin. And you don't wait until you get to Antarctica to see if you can ski or if you can handle dog sleds. So great leaders prepare with intensity all the time. Now, Scott, on the other hand, prepared very differently. He could have engaged in similar activities as Amundsen, but did not. Unlike Amundsen, he took what was easiest and familiar. He took ponies and motor sleds, and instead of dogs. And as soon as they arrived, the ponies froze to death and the motor sled engines froze. So his team from the beginning had to carry everything on their back. Now, unlike Amundsen, who had the right people, the right resources in the right place. Now, both had a vision. They had this big, hairy, audacious goal, what you call the BHAG. However, without the right training, without the right behaviours, the right preparation, it all falls apart in a VUCA event. Now, unlike Scott, Amundsen set up enormous buffers of resources along his route. He doubled what he really needed. He signposted all the way along for every 8 miles of his journey so he could see his way back. Scott only marked his main depot and did not make the markers for his return. Now, sadly, that led to the end and the demise of his team. Now, simply Amundsen had prepared and built his strategy in depth, where Scott had simply been underprepared. Amundsen did not know what the VUCA events would be in front of him. How can we? But prepared for them anyway. One other aspect that was important to note, that Amundsen and Scott, and you may have heard this saying before, Amundsen stuck with what's called the 20-mile march. Now, every day that there was a goal, even in good weather when he could have doubled his distance, he chose to stick with a solid 20 miles a day and rested his team. Now, keeping fit and building their reserves of energy for the VUCA days ahead. Not knowing if Scott was in front or behind him, he stopped and he rested and focused. Now, Scott, on the other hand, did not. On those good days, he ploughed on, it's probably logical thinking, and doubled his march. However, after this, his team was so exhausted, they then had to spend more time recovering. And then on top of this, when the VUCA event arrived, he had no resources left to face it. And Amundsen kept on going during the VUCA events that kept on hitting them in that vast country. Now, Scott's journal, he wrote that he was just bad luck and that Amundsen had good luck. Luck had nothing to do with it. as you can see. However, luck can play an important advantage to you if you're prepared for it. In fact, when you do the reading on this journey to the South Pole, or read a book called The Last Place on Earth by Ronald Hutphin, Amundsen had the same amount of luck and VUCA events as Scott did. Now, finally, even though Amundsen was 20 miles out from the South Pole, you can imagine he's worked so hard to get there, he stopped and rested. He kept to the 20-mile march. Now, Scott could have made it before him. He didn't know that. Or he could have created that new product before him. However, there was no point in being first if you cannot return to tell the story, or there is no point in having an innovative or new idea if the product you've got cannot scale. You no longer have the right resources or the right people or the right vision in place. Now, Scott did eventually reach the South Pole to find that Amundsen had already been there and left. Now, sadly, as some stories can be, Amundsen returned home, where Scott and his team perished. So what have we learned from this? The best leaders do not always have a visionary ability to predict the future. Who can? But they build a vision on proven foundations with people and are disciplined at pursuing it once they start it. The best leaders are not necessarily more innovative. However, once they've sent the bullets out there to that target, the preparation, they send in the cannonballs, the big guns, and scale that innovation, and they do it quickly. The best leaders are not speedy. They adapt at figuring out when to go fast and when to be slow. The best leaders do not radically change direction. Even when the VUCA event hits, they keep with the 20-mile march. Now, the best leaders do not succeed because of luck. However, luck can play a role. It's what you do with the luck that's going to make that difference and how you're prepared. The best leaders show their vulnerability, as Amundsen did. However, he searched for knowledge and understanding of his environment. Now, a good book to read on leadership and vulnerability is Dare to Lead by Brené Brown. Now, Amundsen was a level 5 leader, either Jim Collins' definition in Good to Great, or Covey's definition in Habits of Successful People, or John Maxwell's 5 levels of leadership. He focused on the survival of his people, having a fierce resolve, ever pushing himself, relentlessly nudging, step by step, getting the small things right that built momentum, creating breakthroughs when that VUCA event came. Now, Amundsen and his team were disciplined. They built a culture of discipline. And when you have a culture of discipline, you do not need hierarchies. As Bob Johansen outlines, hierarchies will die. Cross-functional ownership will survive and thrive. Hierarchies are a thing of the past. Now, Amundsen's team did not diverge from their core. Either they understood their strength and competence and stuck with the tried and true dogs and sledges instead of diverging totally into a new area like the snowmobiles with Scott. Did Amundsen feel safe and secure? Certainly not. In some cases, I'm sure he was terrified. However, he prepared to meet these VUCA events head on with focused determination, ambition to resolve barriers and to succeed. Amundsen was able to zoom into the core, the 20-mile march, like the classroom, yet then zoom out again to the bigger picture, looking at the horizon and focusing on what really matters about bringing his people home, or for us as educators, our students' success as they move into higher education. There is no easy path to being a highly effective leader. And I would argue that creating a vision is not enough. Today's leader in a VUCA world needs to understand the nuances of the cultures around us as well. For as the world gets smaller and the workforce becomes more diverse, 80% of your success will be attributed to the culture and discipline in each one of your organizations. 80%. Now, a VUCA world is challenging to us all. When leaders have to navigate the VUCA environment, they need to see it as an opportunity to change and not just a problem that can be resolved. As nuanced leaders, we need to take in all these behaviours and not just espouse them, but enact them every day with our students, one conversation at a time, in order to live in a VUCA world. I do see the forces of VUCA and VUCA Prime existing in dynamic unison, like ballroom dancers, sparrows, like an orchestra. Leaders, we must learn how to balance the VUCA and VUCA Prime environment to create a better state where everyone can evolve and succeed. Leadership is about walking alongside people to create a culture where we feel safe, have a sense of belonging, are engaged and recognised, and everyone gets to flourish in their own unique ways. And then, in turn, enriching others. Now, our mission as leaders is to inspire people one conversation at a time with that shared vision and common purpose. There's no defining action, no grand program, no killer innovation. It's about building momentum with courageous people all the time. So is it accelerating education in a VUCA Prime world? Maybe not. However, it is about learning the behaviours to engage in a VUCA world, and then train others to train our leaders in these behaviours, including the students, so that they can take advantage of the VUCA event, rather just being a spectator to it. And I think I've just got to my time, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Your smile is your logo. Your personality is your business card. How you leave others feeling after having an experience with you becomes your trademark. I'm
Thank
still
you.
struggling to find the right words to properly describe how fantastic your session was. Thank you so much, sir, for delivering to us such a remarkably outstanding message on the perspective of higher education in the VUCA Prime world. Thank you once again,
pleasure.
sir.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Thank you, sir. Hard work opens doors and shows the world that you're serious about being one of those rare and special human beings who use the fullness of their talents to do their very best. May I now call upon Mrs. T. Kanimori to take a salient role to introduce the esteemed speaker of our next session on globalization and higher education, Mr. Raja P. Arumugam, ex-IAAS, Chief Administrative Officer of the Special Envoy for Syria, United Nations, Geneva. Over to you, ma'am.
Good evening, one and all present here. Mr. Raja P. Arumugam had humble being in a large agricultural family and grew up in a rural part of South India. He graduated his botany from Loyola College and completed his MA in criminology from the University of Madras. To pursue the Indian civil service, he moved to New Delhi and joined LLB course in University of Delhi. He cleared the civil service exam in the first attempt with Tamil literature as an option. He then joined the Indian Audit and Account Service. He was an UN auditor to various countries like Angola, Iraq, US, Kosovo, and Geneva. Mr. Raja was an UN diplomat to countries like Kuwait, Iraq, and currently he is a Chief Administrative Officer, Office of Special Envoy for Syria, Cairo, Egypt, Damascus, Syria, Geneva, and Switzerland. He has numerous accomplishments to his credit, which primarily includes as a lead auditor in Pondicherry government departments, lead auditor for Chennai Port Trust, Tuticorin Port Trust, IIT Madras, and many more government organizations. He has also been the Vice President of Goa Tamil Changam. His legendary service continued as a lead auditor for United Nations Office in Geneva, Vienna, and Yugoslavia. As a part of the normalization of diplomatic relations between Iraq and Kuwait, he assisted in the employment of Kuwait Embassy in Iraq by providing secure air transport logistics arrangement to Kuwait diplomats. In a challenging security environment in Iraq, he was the head of the administration and managed several million annual budget. He organized the Geneva talks to resolve the Syrian crisis. He recently organized the establishment of the Syrian Constitutional Committee. We are very fortunate to have you with us, sir. Welcome you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. True respect means accepting someone and honoring his or her thoughts and feelings. We SRM IST members are highly privileged to honor you virtually, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Over to you, sir, for your session.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning and good evening to all those who are joined virtually on this very important and a very good initiative by the SRM Institute. You must be wondering, with all my background in peacekeeping and things like that, what am I doing here on higher education? There's a reason. And when Dr. Asogan approached me with the topic, I was a little bit hesitant initially, but then I decided to accept it. And then to share, although I'm not an educationist, but my experience of what happens globally and what happens in international scenes, and also share my perspective on how the education was when I was a student, and then what I have seen now in a VUCA world. Like everybody else, I was also awestruck by what VUCA is, and then went and looked at it to see it's got a wonderful meaning and clearly serves and fits in very well into what we are doing now and where the world today is. I thought I'll share you my experiences of how the education system was and what globalization has done to creating this VUCA. Because when I was a student in the early 80s in the universities in Madras, and we never had, life was much more simple, less complicated, and more controlled. But with globalization taking place, because today we all live in a globalized world where one end of the world is connected to another end of the world by a fraction of a second with all technological advances, and how it has impacted the education system, particularly the higher education system, and more specifically the higher education system in India, and what challenges it throws out in a VUCA world is what I'm trying to give my perspectives on. As I also basically did my early education in Madras University, and then later in Delhi University, and in my limited career in Government of India in India, I was actually involved in seeing the institutes like IIT Madras or central institutes like Pondicherry University and Goa University. I'd seen how they were managed, and these are all pre-liberalized India. India started liberalizing only in the 1990s, and that opened up a lot of things which led to the Indian education system, particularly higher education system, competing with going global and competing with some of the international universities of the world. Just put a little bit of perspective on VUCA. We live in a world which is very volatile, and particularly from the organization where I come from, United Nations, we see so much of volatility of peacekeeping and fights and tensions and all kinds of things happening all over the world, which has got a major impact on every aspect of life, leave alone the higher education. Uncertainty in today's world has got impact on everyone's life from the time you wake up till you go to sleep. It is so uncertain and volatile, and it's complex. It's not easy. It's complex. Nothing is. It might look very simple on the surface, but when you scratch it a little bit, you will realize how complex it is and ambiguous, and there's no clarity on what is happening. So that's the world we are in. That's what globalization in the last 20-30 years have brought in the world toward. And in a situation like this where nothing is certain, everything is VUCA, we see how we move forward, look at the challenges of higher educations have India, and the resources, the amount of resources it needs. And we also look at how in a VUCA situation, how the Indian higher education should move ahead and become a force internationally and take part in the globalization process. just to talk a little bit about the challenges. There's so much of change in a globalized world. The VUCA is in technology. The technology keeps changing every day. What is relevant in last month is absolutely irrelevant now. We have a new technology coming and taking over the previous one. There's so much of uncertainty, and technology is moving ahead. Demography is changing. What was the population of the world during after the Second World War has quadrupled now. India used to have 300 million population. Now in the last 70, 80 years, it has gone to 1.3 billion people. Obviously, more people, more problem, more VUCA. So that's another one. The society has changed a lot. It has become more urban. It has become more international. People are moving. Mobility of population is taking place globally. Within the country, globally, people have started moving from rural areas to towns and towns to metropolitan cities, which has brought in itself with all kinds of problems. The environment degradation is something which the world is looking at it. Um, Economy and politics, I don't have to tell you, because everything is so volatile and uncertain at this stage. This is where the world globalization has brought the world to. In a situation like this, let's look at higher education, how the higher education in India has shaped up in the shaped up in the last 60, 70 years. If you look at immediately after independence, the government had invested so much on bringing in a lot of institutes of higher learning, IITs, IIMs, and Indian Institute of Sciences. Some of the more known technological institutes had come up on the technology side.
And Mr. Sambat here joined next hour.
All right, okay. So a lot of institutions have been started, and initially they were all protected by the various rules and regulations of the government, and Indian higher education was reaching a level of excellence. There were a lot of institutes of excellence which is established, and they've done a considerable advancement and development of higher education in India. But the late 1990s, 80s, 90s, when India realized that its policy of protectionism is not helping much, when India opened up its opened up its economy and society to international competition, things completely changed. If you look at in 1980s, when I was a student, the number of people who were going out on foreign studies to foreign universities used to be less than 20, 30,000 in a year. But then with globalization, a lot of people have started traveling out. I did a little research and work on to see how globalization has affected the Indian higher education. And one area where it has really affected is the number of students who are going out into foreign universities has considerably increased a lot. In fact, the statistics are mind-boggling. It used to be about 66,000 students went out to study in foreign universities. That was in 2000. And in 2016, it went to 440,000 students. And now it's almost about 770,000 students. But because of COVID and the restrictions by some of these countries, the numbers have slightly decreased. And once when COVID comes, the projected number of Indians going outside for higher studies to universities outside is projected to be about 1.8 million students are expected to go outside in 2024, which is a big number. During the same time, the number of students in Indian universities, it used to be at 37 million in 2016, and it's expected to go up to 40 to 45 million in 2024. The percentage of increase is very small. Obviously, there is an opening up of the economy, and the globalization and the VUCA world had forced students to move out to universities outside. what has it brought? If you really look at in terms of dollar value, initially India was spending about $28 billion. $28 billion is what money was spent by India. Indian students who are going out and spending annually for their studies outside at this stage is $28 billion. And it's expected to go up to $80 billion. The figures are mind-boggling. $80 billion in 2024 is what the expenditure is. Education has become a business. This is what the globalization has done to it. The foreign universities are benefiting out of Indian economy boom, and Indians are spending a lot of money, hard-earned dollars in as an investment in foreign universities. Can you please mute, please?
Sir, you can continue, sir. Sir, Raja, sir.
The drain of resources is going high, and at some point, is my internet connection a problem? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can
Yes,
hear
sir.
you, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right, okay, thank you. Because it shows my internet connection is unstable. It's still, we live in a VUCA world. So this is where it is. More and more students are going for specialization to foreign universities, and the higher universities in India are offering more of general course. At some point, there are several reasons why this is happening, why globalization is moving Indian students to foreign universities, and that results in not only brain drain, but it also results in economical drain. And at some point, we need to stop it and reverse the trend. I'll come to that at the later point. But why is this happening? Because there are two reasons. One, if somebody finishes a higher education in India, specialization, the placement you get is with an annual salary of about maximum of 10 to 12,000 US dollars, whereas somebody who graduates from any of the institutes in the world gets a very high salary of 80,000 to $100,000. So economic reasons has been so far, and one of the reasons why the students who are very good and who can afford, the globalization has brought in an increased revenue to the middle income groups. So that students from middle class families and above middle class families prefer to go out, do a studies outside, and find a job elsewhere, and try and lead a life. So obviously, the competitiveness provided by the international universities has got an edge. And that's the reason, one of the things, initially in the last 20, 30 years, people were going out for a better life, better education, better infrastructure, better research and development facilities, and so that they could earn a much better living, live a much better standard of living in a foreign country. And that's the reason. And that's where we have a problem, But over a period of time, post-COVID, VUCA situation, another factor is, of course, as you see, some of the global CEOs, particularly in the US, global CEOs are mainly Indians now. The Indians are taking over and paid. When an average Indian sees the pay package of Sundar Pichai or Satya Nadella or the latest one to the club is Parag Agarwal of Twitter, they feel inspired. They think going out, you can make millions of dollars as your pay, or Indra Nui for that matter. They think they can go back and make millions of dollars by investing about 100,000 or 200,000 in higher education, settle down in any of the Western countries, and lead a comfortable life. But there are challenges to it. You don't realize it until you go out, because I've been living outside India for almost 25 years in different parts of the world. So there are challenges to that life. Everything is not, the grass is not green on the other side. It's always green on the other side, but it's not the same. It's quite different. You have certain advantages, you have certain disadvantages, and you have certain advantages living in India, surviving in India, you have advantages. So that being said, but of late, with the COVID and VUCA world, the attitude of Indians going out. I see a lot of Indians, youngsters, who keep talking to me quite regularly. I do talk to people, youngsters, and give them kind of a mentoring on what they want to do. But if you really see, the Indians now are looking at coming out of India not for the purpose of money. It's no longer money. They want to have a purpose in life. They don't want to go to West. They don't want to go to the US. They don't want to go to UK, or they don't want to go to any other country. They are more prepared to go to any underdeveloped countries, actively involved in humanitarian exercises as long as their ends are met. They're not after money. They want to have a purpose in life for what they want. And they're prepared even to go back and live in India and work for a nominal salary. So that there is a paradigm shift in the mentality of youngsters to go out and learn and come back. This is precisely is what VUCA is all about. It's still uncertain. It's volatile. So there is a change in the mindset, and COVID has done a lot of rethinking to the young minds to see how we can keep the world a safe place in terms of public health. They are more conscious about environment. They're more conscious about income disparities. They are more conscious about poverty and development. The youngsters of today, particularly in India, are looking out to go out and do things different. They're no longer interested in money. That is very, very clear. In a situation like this, what should what should Indian universities do? We have the liberalized Indian universities. The private entrepreneurs have invested a lot of money, and they've all developed education institutions. A great example is SRM Institute, which was started 30 years ago, and today turned out to be one of the institutes of excellence in India. And they're doing a phenomenal job, not only in general science. They are into they're into medicine, engineering, and things like that. Like this, similarly, there are a lot of private institutes which have set up infrastructure, and then they've been doing an excellent job in the last 20, 30 years, and trying to compete with some of the other international universities, which are difficult to compete at this stage. At some point in life, at least during our lifetime, we would like to see our Indian university, particularly private institutions, compete with some of the best universities in the world. And even when you make a comparison between these two universities, you need to be very mindful of the fact that we are not comparing apples and apples. Okay, I just want to make a little bit of comparison to give you a perspective of how we are doing much better, even with in the last 20, 30 years. An institution like SRM has been doing extremely different and extremely well when you compare to some of the international universities. Just to make a little bit of comparison, so that you will understand the disparity between our what we are competing with and what capacity we have. That from where I would like to lead to find out what we need to do better to be comparable to those universities. I just want to give a little bit of a comparison between some of the private institutions in India who have been doing a phenomenal job in the last, the government institutions like IITs and IIMs and Indian Institute of Sciences in the last 60, 70 years, and the private institutes which has come up in the last 30, 40 years with developed infrastructure, but with a very, very, very long-term vision of expansion in the next 50, 60 years. Just to give a little bit of perspective, if you really look at the best universities in the world, where every Indian student would like to go, particularly Indians are very keen on going to universities in the US, universities in UK, universities in Australia, universities in Canada. The reason is very simple. The reason is these are all countries where they speak English. English is a language, so it's easy for an Indian with an English background, with an English learning capacity, who's willing to go back and join these universities. You'll be very surprised to know as I said before, India is the second largest supplier of students to all the international universities in these countries, the first being China. The amount of students who are going out, the amount of money that is being spent is phenomenal and mind-boggling. And at some point, as I said before, we need to reverse that and retain the money in India, bring back students so that our institutes should take on these responsibilities and develop into institutes of excellence so that the challenges are met. You need to make a little bit of a comparison just to get perspective. Most of the students in India would like to go to the US, and particularly those who go to the US are willing to go to or trying to go to what we call the Ivy League universities. There are 8 institutions which are in the northeastern part of India, in the US, which are world famous, which attracts most number of students globally, and they are very well famous and very distinguished universities in the last 30-40 years, and most of them would like to go get a degree in this prestigious, because a degree in any of this Ivy League is considered to be prestigious. It is prestigious, and then employability after that it becomes easy. But if you really look at a comparison between the Ivy League universities and Indian university, particularly let me focus on the private institutions. The Ivy League institutions, be it Harvard, be it Princeton. I visited some of the institutes when I was in the US working, just out of curiosity, to just go see what is so great about these institutions. Obviously, these are all institutions which are not established in the 100 years. These are all institutes which are established in the 18th century. If you really look at an institute like Harvard was established in the year 1636. Yale was established in 17,002. And the youngest university is Columbia, which was established in 1865. Of all the Ivy League institutes, 7 were established before the US became an independent country on July 4th, 1776. So these institutes, which are best institutes in the world, has got a history of 300 to 350 years of history behind them, 350 years of development behind them. So what they are today is 300 years of development. Compared to that, the institutes we have in India, the government institutes are 60 to 70 years, and the private institutes are 20 to 25 years. Obviously, we are not comparing apples and apples. We are comparing apples and grapes. But even with this small period of time, with 25, 30 years, we have phenomenally achieved greatness in education, and that's where we should look at. When we look at the challenges of globalization, when you look at VUCA things, when you really wanted to contain, limit, restrict brain drain, when you really wanted to save your hard-earned foreign exchanges, $80 billion going out to foreign universities, if you want to read them in India, we need to do certain things right. And we need to do certain things right in India so that we don't need 350 years. We need maybe another 30 to 50 years to develop institutes of higher learning incomparable to some of the Ivy League institutes, particularly private institutions. So what do we need to do? That's something we need to look at closely so that we make some of the inroads and arrest the movement of Indian students outside. We need to develop our own institutes of excellence. So what we need to do, first of all, India has got phenomenal advantages. India has got the second largest population in the world. In India, the $1.3 billion, out of which 60 to 65% are people below the age of 30. We have tremendous human resources and so much of advantages. India is a democracy. We are free to do what we want to do. And India, in the last 60, 70 years, despite 300 years of economic exploitation by our colonial masters, we have done extremely well in terms of of economy. We are the 6th largest economy now. When even during the VUCA of COVID times, when the world economy has been shrinking, when the projections are about 1% or 2% or 2.5% of some of the major economies, Indian projections are about 10%. And okay, we are still not comparable to the Chinese. Chinese has got a very high percentage, but India still has a double-digit economic performance projected. So we are doing extremely well in economy. With all these things combined together, we need to invest in our own universities, both in the national government universities and in the private institutions. Government needs to spend more money on modernization. Government needs to spend money on infrastructure. Government needs to expand and promote research and development. Why is any of the Western universities, be it Oxford or Cambridge or Sorbonne or Harvard or Stanford or Princeton is high? Because they've spent so much of money on in research and development, R&D, and then they come out with things which changes the medical field, which changes the technology, which changes engineering, and every year they produce so many Nobel laureates, and that comes from education and research. But we have invested so much, and we need to do more. So we produce more of exports, more of research, more of investments, more of inventions, and which has been acknowledged globally, which needs to be recognized. We need to bring in more internationally recognized stalwarts. We need to have more Nobel laureates coming from medicine. We need to find Nobel laureates from chemistry, medicine, physics. What we have is mainly on literature, but all those Indians who got it on the science field, they've all studied and did their research outside. We need to invest more in India. We need to invest more on our own universities, and that's how we face globalization. That's how we face challenges of globalization. Economy is one part. We are moving ahead very well on economy. Second part is politics. India is slowly moving away from a small power in the region to a leading player globally. We are part of some of the major political alliances, be it BRICS, be it Shanghai Cooperation. We are there in the UN Security Council on a non-permanent basis. We are part of G20. We are moving politically. We are moving economically, but we also need to move education-wise. The more we invest in education, the more we develop our own institutions. That brings the cream of best of educations to our own students. That helps us develop the human potential we have. The people below the age group of 30 is incredibly high, is 65%, which is not comparable to any of the Western developed countries where they have a small population. So we need to use that potential carefully. We need to invest wisely. We need to face the challenges of globalization, and we need to look at not necessarily West. We should, since, as I said, there's a paradigm shift in the minds of youngsters. They're no longer going after money. They're going after purpose in life. So we need not look at the Western world and have association with the Western world. We need to look at continents like Africa. We need to look at continents like East Asia. We need to look at Middle East, where the institutes of excellence, or institutes like SRM should have some kind of a collaboration and with the universities in those regions, expand our activities beyond India and move them out. At the same time, we also have to have some kind of a partnership with some of the internationally reputed universities, have some kind of equal partnership and try and benefit with the research activities that is taking place, the academia that is taking place, and exchange programs between these universities. What we have now in India is kind of a policy of protectionism. We are still very careful about not letting the international universities establish their campuses in India, because that is really a problem according to the Indian things. But at some point, we can't just be protecting our own institutions. We need to expose them a little, a kind of a controlled exposure for them to compete with the international universities globally. you need to have a partnership with the universities, the reputed universities, and at the same time, we need to develop our own. So that comes with a kind of hybrid partnership between the two ends of the spectrum. That is what is needed. So what we need is for us to face the challenges of globalization, we need to invest more on research. The government has to take a part. Government needs to invest because spending $80 billion in 2024 on an education which is going out of the country is something which needs to look at closely and invest that and retain our students and develop our own institutes of excellence. That's how we will move forward. That's how we will face VUCA, and that's how we conserve our own energy, our own resources, and our own facilities. And that's how we develop our own next generation and generations to come to face the challenges of the globalized world. With that, I take this opportunity to thank you from the bottom of my heart to give me an opportunity to speak on this international crowd. I want to thank the Vice Principal, Mr. Asokan, for reaching out to me, and to all those who had listened to me. I thank you from the bottom of my heart, and thank you very much, and Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, before proceed with it, can I request all the dignitaries to join for a group photo by thumbs up, Mr. Raja sir, Sampath sir, and Uma madam? Can you please join with us once again? Thumbs up, sir, Raja sir. Thank you. So, give me just a minute. Give me a minute, sir. One more, sir. Thank you, sir. I have done.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Over to MC desk.
Sir, your session was indeed impeccable. It was absolutely incredible how you tailored your message for the audience and captivated them from the beginning to the end. The information you delivered really transformed the meeting into a highly productive one. Many thanks for that, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Words have a magical power. They can bring either the greatest happiness or the deepest despair. They can transform knowledge from teacher to student. Words enable the orator to sway his audience and dictate its decisions. Words are capable of arousing the strongest emotions and prompting all men's actions. May I now request once again Mrs. T. Kanimori to take a vital role to introduce the eminent speaker of our next session, Mr. Sridharan Sampath, CEO, Aspire Training Consultancy, Fujairah Creative City, Fujairah, UAE. Over to you, ma'am.
Good evening, one and all. Mr. Sridharan Sampath has an education qualification of MCA, MBA, MSc Psychology, MPhil. He is currently functioning as CEO, Aspire Training Consultancy, Fujairah Creative City, Fujairah, UAE since 2016. He has conducted various training programs in supply chain management, procurement and contracts management, ICC cargo classes, marine and cargo insurance, and many more for the corporates. He has traveled to Gulf countries of KSA, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain for conducting the management training programs. He has this familiarity in dealing with student participants, trainees of different nationalities with diverse cultural background. He is a visiting professor with American University of Emirates, Dubai International Academic City, Emirates Institute for Banking and Financial Studies, Dubai and Sharjah, King's Center for Professional Development, Ras Al Khaimah, Australian Institute of Management, Academic Partners, Sharjah, Birla Institute of Technology, Ras Al Khaimah, Swiss Business School, Sharjah, Ras Al Khaimah, Manipal Academy of Higher Education, Dubai, Western International College, University of Balkan, Ras Al Khaimah. He is an expertise in service operations management, international business, UAE labor law, supply chain management, and many more. He enhanced his profession as an associate dean in Westford School of Management, Sharjah, UAE. Prior to working in UAE, he worked in India with Magnus School of Business, Ahmed University, Annamalai University, and Anna University. He also gives psychological counseling to help individuals to be confident, to overcome fear, and understand behavioral issues. He has an extensive experience in designing and conducting customized training programs for the corporates. His corporate training programs include Leadership and Change Management Program conducted for Siemens Building Constructions, Dubai. Supply Chain Management Program conducted for American Air Filters, Dubai. Strategic Management Program conducted for Nigerian National Oil Company, Dubai. Forecasting and Supply Chain Planning Program conducted for Sharaf DG, Dubai, and many more programs. He has conducted around 15 training programs in UAE, Saudi Arabia, Oman, and Kazakhstan. We are very much happy to welcome you, sir, for the session. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. A culture of honor is celebrating who a person is without stumbling over who they are not. We SRM IST members are highly privileged to honor you virtually, sir.
Good evening, one and all. Thank you very much for the introduction given. Good evening, Asogan sir. Personally, because I am able to join only because of Dr. Asogan sir. Thank you for the invite once again. And I have been asked to give a keynote speech on administering in the situation of VUCA. If I'm right, if I'm allowed to express, VUCA is a situation which we have been, except that it is not being expressed as it is. In fact, I have a very short presentation which I would like to share, and through that I'll be going through the speech. Is it okay, sir? Can I share the material?
Please, sir. You can, sir.
Thank you. Contents are very less in this. In fact, say every home is a university and the parents are the teachers. So VUCA situation, there are certain basic things in life which technology and money can never change. Like, for example, we get up in the morning, we get the sunrise. In the evening, there is a sunset. In fact, we have been taught that way. But the sun never rises, the sun never sets. It's basically the earth moving closer to the sun, moving away from the sun. Now, higher education, it's a cornerstone of our state future. It's a statement given by Michelle Eugen Grisham. She was the former governor of the state of New Mexico in US. So administering higher education in the situation of VUCA. Now, administering an institution, if I am to recollect, now take the case of India. Before 1947, we never had the Union of Indian Republic. It was very much princely states, around 545 princely states, which were in the name of different ethnicities, ruled by different Nawabs, Nizams, Rajas, Maharajas. Now, 1947 is a watershed in our Indian history when India was given the independence. And those initial stages, if we could take a leaf out of it, we know very well that not only administering an institution, even administering a country in the situation of VUCA becomes much proficient. And for your information, today's presentation, it's not a fire drill, so it's an interactive event. So please, questions and comments are always welcome. Feel free to be participative. So throughout history and across different cultures, higher education has two great goals: help students become smart, help students become good. Now, VUCA situation, I could very well relate to what has happened in the world history. We all know about Thomas Alva Edison. Now, this is a situation which happened way back in the year 1914, incidentally in the month of December. That's why I thought I could very well quote this. So at around 5:30 in the evening on December 10, 1914, a massive explosion erupted in West Orange, a county in the state of New Jersey in US. 10 buildings in the legendary inventor Thomas Alva Edison's plant, which made up more than half of the site, were engulfed in flames. So between 6 to 8 fire departments rushed to the scene, but the chemical fueled inferno was too powerful to put out quickly. Now, the reason why I'm saying this, Thomas Alva Edison, the inventor of the bulb, according to an interview given to Reader's Digest in 1961 by Edison's son Charles, in spite of all his inventions and his laboratory getting burned, Edison calmly walked over to him as he watched the fire destroy his dad's work. And in a childlike voice, could you please mute?
Yes, sir. Muted, sir.
Background voice. Thank you, sir. So in a childlike voice, Edison told his 25-year-old son, "Go get your mother and all her friends. They will never see a fire like this again." So when Charles, his son, objected, Edison said, "It's all right. We have just got rid of a lot of rubbish." In fact, if you go through the New York Times, which has depicted this incident, it even says that Edison was clapping fast. Why he was clapping very fast? People thought he has gone crazy. He said, "All my mistakes are getting burnt. All my mistakes are getting burnt." And after thoroughly surveying the damage, Edison determined that he had lost, in those days accounts, 9,19,788. That is $919,788. In today's value, it's around $23 million. Just think. Leave alone the money part, because we can earn the money. But when somebody's hard work, when somebody's efforts are getting burned. Now, this is what is given by Matthew Josephson, who had written his biography. The flames had consumed years of priceless records and prototypes, though we can very well say it's a disaster, but still it's an uncertain situation. What will happen to his future? And his plant's insurance covered only about a third of the total damage. So we can very well understand. And what was his age at that time? He was 67 years old. So just look at the way an ambiguous situation, complex situation where somebody's priceless, invaluable work had been burned. But true to his words, he said, "I am 67 years old, but I will start all over again tomorrow." But after just 3 weeks, with a sizable loan from his friend, Henry Ford, Edison got part of the plant up and running again. His employees worried, but they still gave their full cooperation. They worked a double shift and they set to work producing more than ever. So in that particular year, when this incident happened, that is 1914, in the year 1915, he made almost $10 million in revenue. So a volatile situation, an ambiguous situation where the entire laboratory had got burned. Now, when that could happen to one of the greatest scientists, now just think, we have to always expect the unexpected. Because what happens in today's scenario, people always expect the expected. Again, just going back to the history, the year 1974, when our former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi had requested the American government to supply us with supercomputers, we were denied. And what happened? The then Prime Minister, Indira Gandhi, she didn't panic. She ultimately started and gave nod to the commencement of an institution by the name CDAC, Center for Development of Advanced Computing. And India joined the elite group of countries which could have supercomputers of their own. In fact, Cray Corporation, which belonged to US, they were producing supercomputers, but our CDAC started producing supercomputers with the names of Param, Anupam, Anurag series. And it is basically situations which are ambiguous, situations which are basically complex, and where the future is uncertain. That is the time when new innovations keep coming. In fact, we can always think this way, that compared to a clear situation where people get into what is called as a comfort zone, it is basically the confusing situation where we have a lot of ambiguity, which brings out a better solution. Let me give a very small story. It's a small kingdom where the king can rule that kingdom only for 5 years. At the end of 5 years, the king will be escorted by the security guards to the border of the kingdom where there is a big river flowing. The king will be escorted through the river to the other side of the river where there was a wild forest. And in that wild forest, they had wild animals, and ultimately the king's future is gone. So what happened? Many people who were elected to be kings even were afraid to continue, because at the end of 5 years, somebody's life is gone. Now, some people came forward thinking, right or wrong, 5 years, I'm going to be the king of that particular kingdom. So let me take a risk. There was a situation where a particular king who came to power, the last day of his tenure, the penultimate day, the security guards told him, Majesty, tomorrow is your last date of being a king, and you have to cooperate with us. So the king said, okay. In fact, it just happened that the security guards were conveying this message with a lot of fear, because they thought the king should not be upset. But the king was confident, and he said, they said, we are sorry to convey this, our majesty. Then he said, I'm not feeling sorry. Why are you people feeling sorry? Now, the security guards were very much upset, because normally when this message is conveyed to the incumbent king, they will say, okay, 5 years are there, but the last day their mood, their emotions will change. But this king was strong. Then the next day in the palace, things were very much different, because normally the mood will be somber. It will be a kind of, how to say, a very saddening atmosphere. But this king, in fact, he woke up very early and he ordered the guards to get him the best possible dress, the best jewelry, the best shoes. In fact, the servants were very much shocked Because normally the last day the king will cry, shout, scream, plead, and even say that, please leave me, let me go somewhere and survive. But a rule is a rule, so they had to abide by the rule of the kingdom. Now, as he was escorted to the river, the border of the kingdom, even the boatsman who had been working for generation, he was surprised. Because normally the kings will not they will not board the boat. Now, as they were passing through middle of the river, the boatsman asked, "My Majesty, can I ask you a question?" And the king said, "Please." Anyway, you are going to die on reaching the other side of the river because the wild animals will kill you. For that, why are you being so happy and wearing the best possible dress and the best possible jewelry and shoes, and you look more like as if you are going to be coronated rather than you being killed? To which the king said, "Me getting killed? Why?" To which the boatsman said, "But that's the rule." He said, "Listen carefully. The previous kings before me, they thought only about 5 years. They were not thinking different. But rather, I understood that the problem is not with the rule. The problem is with the way people think. That's why we say situation is the same for everyone, but how people respond. That's why I said VUCA is basically a situation which has been existing all along in our history. Now, this king said to the boatsman, the very first year, I sent 1,000 best hunters to the forest. Now, they had hunted down most of the wild animals. So there was no way the forest could be full with wild animals. Now, second year, I sent the 1,000 best farmers, the agriculturists, who went there. They cleared certain portions of the forest. They started cultivating and they started producing crops. Then the third year, I sent 1,000 best artisans, construction workers, engineers, who went there. They designed the city. They had created a town, and ultimately these people started settling there. Then the next fourth year, I sent 1,000 best doctors and nurses who started creating wonderful hospitals along with the engineers. And by the fifth year, they all are settled. The schools started, colleges started. And now I am going to be on the particular kingdom and I am going to rule them. And he told the boatsman, if at all you need a job, you please come to me. I will give you a much better job if you wish. Now, the reason why I'm saying is Thomas Alva Edison went through a situation which was least expected, where his invaluable inventions, records, scientific formulas and theories were burned. And he said, come, let's all clap and enjoy the situation. And people thought he has gone crazy. And what was the situation? The next year, his company started making $10 million more in revenue compared to the year 1914. Now, this particular story, I said it could be a story, but it's a question of thinking different. See, when everyone, that's why they say the difference between donkeys and horses. At the time of birth, both donkeys and horses look similar, same. But as they grow up, donkeys are of the same size, same color, but horses are of the different color. So this king going through what is called as a volatile situation, only 5 years. And at the end of 5 years, his life is gone. See, just think. And going through what is called as uncertain time. What is the uncertain time? What will happen in that 5 year? We don't know. There could be coup. There could be someone who could come and topple. They can proclaim the leadership of that kingdom in a complex situation. People behave very much good or even human because many, or rather to say, all of us, we don't know what is going to be the day of death. The day we know that this is the day somebody is going to die, how they will behave. Probably they will start manipulating, thinking different, just to safeguard themselves. Now, an ambiguous situation. Oh, what if? But in spite of that, this king started thinking different. So, like how certain things never changes in our life in terms of a day or a night or a seasonal rain or summer or winter, we just adapt as it is. Except that when it comes to a day-to-day life, to be very frank, we all are adaptive. We all are flexible, except that when it has to be sustained, over a period of time, that is where we basically lack. In fact, I would just like to go to YouTube for 1 minute. It is a very small video. It's just some 40 seconds. This is the story of a French athlete by the name Malena Robert Micon. Now, this particular athlete participated in the Sydney Olympics. She is a discus thrower. It's a field athletics. Now, in the discus throw, she represented France. In the Sydney Olympics, she basically came 29th position. Then 2004, Athens, the capital of Greece, Olympics, she even slid one position down. She came in the 30th position. Then 2008, Beijing Olympics, she came in the 8th position. 2012 London Olympics, she came in the 5th position. And then in Rio Olympics 2016, she won the silver medal. Now, the reason why I'm saying this, just give me a minute. I will just switch over to YouTube for a minute just to show you this video, because she is a very great athlete. Just 1 minute. Let me share this on the screen. Yes, this is the video. This is the athlete. So coming on to this particular situation, I hope, is the PowerPoint being shared on the screen?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So if you can look into this particular supreme athlete situation, because normally we expect what is called as the expected. But what happens in life is somebody who is representing a particular country in Olympics, which is basically the test of the complete dedication and endurance. Now, Sydney 2000, that means at the least she should have been practicing for 6 to 8 years prior minimum. And then to get into the podium position where she had to fight it out for 16 years. It's an extraordinary situation which saps the energy, not only physically, but mentally. So is it so difficult even to what is called as deal with situations which requires us only to make a small adjustment and adaptation? Now, higher education institutions are not created in one day. Like they say a proverb, Rome was not built in one day, but it's a small adaptation. Now, when the world went through the oil crisis, because the Suez Canal was shut between 1967 and 1975, where crude oil prices shot up. And today we are in a situation where the crude oil prices are not moving beyond a particular price, where there are a lot of alternatives available. It's only a question of how we view the situation and make the adaptation. So here the empires of the future are the empires of the mind, according to Winston Churchill, where in his delivery speech on 6th September 1943 at Harvard, he gave the statement. The empires of the future are the empires of the mind. So this volatility, uncertain about what? Believe me, the one particular field which had beautifully adapted even during the COVID time, because in recent times, the uncertain, complex situation we went through is last year, COVID, is education, where in many countries, the adaptation to online. Of course, initially it was tough and many children found it difficult, but at least we had an alternative, where education is one particular field which had the least disruption. Now, Calvin Coolidge, the 30th US president, see, look at his beautiful sayings. Nothing in the world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistent and determination alone are omnipotent. The slogan "Press on" has solved and always will solve the problems of the human race. In our Indian language, Sanskrit, there is a saying called Charai Veti. Charai Veti means keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. Keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. That means irrespective of what the situation is, whether somebody is able to, whether somebody is not able to, keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. So we don't grow when things are easily accessible. We grow when we face challenges. What makes people difficult? What makes people stubborn? It is being in the comfort zone. So we grow when we face challenges. In fact, life is beautiful when we have challenges, when we get everything. When we have everything, do you think people will be moving away from their comfort zone? Certainly not. Now think of the previous generation, the Y generation. Till Y generation, education was comfortable. Comfortable in the sense there was no destruction, There was no distraction, no internet. There is absolutely no online. There is no web. It was blackboard, white chalk piece, then switching over to what is called as whiteboard, marker pen, OHP, overhead projector. Then ultimately you have what is called as classroom projector. To the level where we are very much comfortable, it's a small adjustments which we need to make. See here, the importance of being challenged. In fact, in a leading Indian institution here, Manipal Academy of Higher Education, where I am associated as a visiting professor, I came across a particular student who shared this with me. See here, the importance of being challenged. The person who has most profoundly affected my performance character is my basketball coach. He had me play power forward. And remember, basketball is one game where somebody will have to be of a considerable height. Even though I am only 5 feet 4 inches, when I became frustrated, he never let me give up. I never before had to do anything so far out of my comfort zone. A higher education girl student. That's why I didn't want to put the name. This is the experience she shared with me. So when people are not challenged, when they are in the status quo, ultimately people become what is called as a drone. That means operated more by what is called as the sequence, going through the motions. But when people are being challenged, again, look into the word, the persistence. That's what I told you about Calvin Coolidge here. The greatest of the boxers or the greatest of the sports person the world has seen. In fact, the first superstar of the world sports, Cassius Clay, who later came to be known as Muhammad Ali. Look at the way he has said, I hated every minute of training. It's not that he enjoyed, he hated. Full and full of strain, physically, mentally, emotionally. But I said, don't quit. Suffer now and live the rest of your life as a champion. Unfortunately, he passed away some years back. So what are the essential characteristics of a VUCA higher educational leader? We can follow what is called as a particular method called creative destruction, a possible solution to deal with VUCA. What is the meaning of this creative destruction? It is basically a theory rooted in economics, which describes the process through which entrepreneurs disrupt the current and often entrenched system and structures. That's why I shared with you that story of the king who never thought what everyone used to think, but he very well thought different, disrupting, displacing them with new innovative solutions according to Schumpeter, because Schumpeter is the genius who created and coined the word called entrepreneur. In addition, complementary to Schumpeter's original theory, Kisner in the year 2009 states that these entrepreneurs also can discover untapped opportunities that they then capitalize on and which do not destroy the current system but add to it. In fact, as Indians, you all know, there is a place in Andhra Pradesh called Puttur, where they gave the treatment for bone setting. That means any bone, any joint, that which is broken. And what they do is, if anything has been broken by mistake, half, 1/3, 1/4, they break it fully. Why? Once they break it fully, then they apply the medicine, which is a proprietary medicine, and then ensure that it is set right. In fact, in USA, there is a leading supermarket chain called Kmart, and in their competition with Macy's, Target, Metro, Walmart, they couldn't compete much and they were making losses. They had a meeting in which a lot of executives were giving their suggestions, and ultimately one particular one particular supervisor gave a suggestion which angered everyone. He said, let's burn some Kmarts. Immediately, the executive said, have you gone crazy to give a suggestion like that? He said, there is nothing for us to lose. Already we are making loss. Now, if some Kmarts are burnt, at least it will make a news. At least people will know that Kmart is still operating. And then we can tell them that we will be back to business in, say, 3 months or 6 months, which will make us again come back to winning ways. And it happened. And even though they didn't burn it, unfortunately, there was a fire accident in 2 Kmart centers, and then they got the insurance claim. And again, the information was floated to the public that we will be back to business and we will be at the customer service. And it happened in the next 6 months, and they started making profits. Like how Thomas Alva Edison thought of a situation which was complex, where all his wrongdoings were burned. That's how he viewed it. Otherwise, be a stoic, kind of a monk, taking things like a Zen monk, being balanced. To do great things, we need to be able to endure tragedy and setbacks. But this is not a tragedy. This is only a setback. Living in a volatile situation, it's like where somebody's home is situated next to the border between 2 countries. So a stoic is someone who transforms fear into prudence, pain into transformation, mistakes into initiation, and desire into undertaking. So it's fine to initially respond to loss or a failure with sadness or anger, but only if it's fleeting. When tragedy strikes, we must accept that it has happened and that you cannot change the past. So we need to live in the present and think of the future. So finding the opportunity to overcome a challenge ultimately makes us stronger. So when we go through a complex situation, like how our Indian stock markets last year was around, say, it even went down, Sensex went down to somewhere around 26,000 points. And today, though there has been a small sliding down in the last 1 week due to the global situation, it even crossed the 62,000 points, which was unprecedented. So a situation which we have not gone through probably is for good. So when we got to love what we do and all that it entails, the good and the bad, we have to learn to find joy in every single thing that happens. Leadership in the case of higher education is not a position, but a disposition. So the true leaders don't create followers, but they create more leaders. So administering in the VUCA situation, these are some of the areas which I felt. Preserving your physical, mental, and emotional strength, which is critical to the ability to lead the organization today in the VUCA situation. A slide in the stock market, it can very well. In fact, it's like the V-shaped recovery, they say. Like it can go deep down and decline to a level where it goes to the worst. But after that, things can only get better. Leaders are also human and have only so much intellectual and emotional energy to expend in the course of a day. Except that they are more balanced, they are more experienced, but even the experiences that they go through are new. So to succeed in a VUCA world, they must expend that energy in the areas that have the highest payoff for the organizations. Developing vision and strategy, like 2008 collapse of Greece economy, when Greece said that we are pulling out of EU, European Union, Greece and Cyprus. It would have been easier for the European Union to say, okay, if you wish so, what can we do? But Germany, like an elder brother, came to their rescue and said, this is what the plan is. And it was a tightening of the belt, austere measure. And this year, Greece has come out of their debt trap, which they were not used to till 2008. Now listen to suggestion, irrespective of levels of employees. A truck manufacturing company where they manufactured a new truck a competitive truck in the market. And they had very well finished, and it was about to be transported to the showroom. So when they pulled it out of the factory, they understood that they had not taken into consideration the height of the roof. And exactly it was hitting. Engineers gave different suggestions. Somebody said maximum it is going to be only a scratch, and we can very well pull it, and then we can very well repaint it. But the CEO was not impressed. Then the security guard in that factory told the CEO, can I give a suggestion if I am given the opportunity? To which many people even said, how could, what do you know? Then the CEO said, let him. That's the time he said, the difference is in terms of the height of the particular tire. If we can very well deflate the tire and pull it out, it can come out comfortably. Whereas we can very well inflate the tire once it is out. Now, the CEO listened to the suggestion, and ultimately it happened to be successful. That's why I said listening to suggestion, irrespective of levels of employees, building high performing teams. Like there are people who are focused and who are willing to give their everything, high performing teams. Setting the internal and external conditions for success, time bound, smart goals, and then developing a child's attitude. Have you seen children till the age of say 10, 11, how much ever you scold them, again they will come back to us. So that means you make a mistake, you don't think of that as a mistake. See, nobody does a mistake knowingly, except for some cases. We try to do something which by some reason happens to be a terrible mistake. There is no point in just thinking over that same mistake, rather that adaptability. Okay, what am I supposed to do next? So the child's attitude. Living in day-tight compartments instead of thinking too far. In fact, recently, a month back when in fact, 2 months back, sorry, this is the month of December, which has started. In the month of September, when higher education institutions were opened in UAE, particularly in Dubai, where they said physical classes are permitted. Because most of the population has been vaccinated with 2 doses, and even people who have been vaccinated 6 months before were told to go for booster doses. One student asked me, like, sir, when this COVID situation will get over? I said, probably around 2025. He said, sir, don't try to be negative. Then I said, I am not trying to be negative. See, this is a situation which nobody knows. And by the time the world could even know that it had taken a toll of around, say, 5 million people. So what could we do about it? But at the same time, comparatively, though in certain countries, the media has portrayed it as if like the healthcare system is not well equipped, because nobody is aware. Say it's like when a new pandemic, in fact, it's not even pandemic. One happiest news is they said, by this year and next year, the plan is to make it into endemic. That means a particular virus attack, which is only country specific. So I said, be prepared, because nobody knows the situation. The worst possible cases, like we have to be prepared only to live with it, with certain precautions. So think for the day and be flexible. Like last year, the classroom teaching switched over to what is called as online mode till normalcy and back to classes. So mostly, slowly, I won't say that everywhere in every country, because it depends on the respective country, the availability of vaccination. So in these cases, slowly, we are coming back to normalcy. So the same happens. Now take the case of a Harley Davidson bike company, a heavyweight, thick bike manufacturing company. When companies like Honda, Suzuki, Kawasaki entered US, and a British company called Triumph entered US and started manufacturing thin bikes. In that case, Harley Davidson faced loss for 8 consecutive years, not even break even. 8 consecutive years they had to go through a big loss, and any other company would have made a decision, okay, once for all. But Harley Davidson went through it and ultimately ensured that they are back to winning ways, because the executives told the strategy that we have to compete with these companies, but the CEO was adamant that it should not be thin bikes, but only the thick bikes. Now, preparing for the future.
Sir, excuse me, sir.
Yes, sir.
Can I interrupt you for 1 or 10 or 15 seconds, sir?
Yes, sir.
May I know how long you will take, sir? Because
this is the last slide, sir.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
This is the last slide.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
No, because when I was told about the time, I was very clear that it will not exceed the time.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir. Happy, sir.
This is the last slide. Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you, sir.
So when the going gets tough, the tough gets going. Now we need to prepare for the future and sustain ourselves. Doing so allows us to aggressively pursue the goals through the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Now we need to develop an attitude called what's the worst that is going to happen. I hope we all know Jackie Chan, Hollywood actor of Hong Kong origin. Now he acted in a movie called Rumble in the Bronx, and the speciality of Jackie Chan used to be, he used to do the stunt scenes on his own. There never used to be a body double. Now, by mistake, he fell down from a 15-floor building, and a sharp object poked into this right ear side, and he was admitted to the hospital, and the doctor told that hereafterwards you should not enact the stunt scenes on your own. He was at the hospital for around 6 months, and then he got better. He came back to normal, and on the day of discharge, the doctor asked him, "What have you decided?" To which Jackie Chan said, "Yes, I have decided to change the doctor. That means I will keep doing what I feel is the best." So the doctor told him, "You have to decide not to enact stunt scenes on your own." To which Jackie Chan said, "Yes, I have decided, but to change the doctor." So the what should become so what. Yes, there is a complexity. Yes, there is an ambiguity. Because remember, education is one field where there are only minimal changes that are expected to take place. Because change of curriculum or change of what is called as an approach is not going to happen in the short term, but rather at the end of a financial year or at the end of an academic year. Whereas these ambiguities or this, in fact, from last year, what I have seen on being associated with higher institutions in teaching, the first 15-20 days when this COVID situation became a pandemic, there was confusion regarding what is to be. And then different platforms were tried, Adobe, then Cisco WebEx, then ultimately Teams and Zoom. And the switchover was very smooth, and even students are writing their exams comfortably, and even software like Metal, which has taken over, where even the student movement can very well be calculated, and we can very well tell the student whether they are writing proper or they will be disqualified from further writing. So the monitoring becomes much easier. So according to me, and based on the situation that we have gone through, it's only a small adaptation we need to do in this VUCA situation related to our higher education. And thank you all for your patient listening. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Thank you, sir, for that extraordinary presentation that you gave. It was simple yet extraordinarily profound and effective, especially the way you kept virtually every member of the audience hanging on your every word. That was absolutely awe-inspiring. We wholeheartedly appreciate all your efforts, and thank you once again, sir.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir. All successful people, men and women, are big dreamers. They imagine what their future could be, ideal in every respect, and then they work every day toward their distant vision, that goal or purpose. As we move to the last session of the day, may I request Mrs. T. Kanimori to be glad enough to introduce our dignified guest of our fourth session on higher education transformation for global competitiveness by Dr. Uma Raghunathan, Chief Technical Officer, Directorate of Knowledge Management in Agriculture, New Delhi, India, and former Director, AICTE, India. Over to you, ma'am.
Dr. Uma Raghunathan has 28 years of government experience. She joined the Indian Council of Agricultural Research in the year 1993 as a technical information officer. She became a senior technical officer and continued till 2018. She continued as chief technical officer till joining AICTE on deputation. She is presently posted in DKMA, Directorate of Knowledge Management in Agriculture from May 2018 to 4th May 2021. Dr. Uma was the Director in the Approval Bureau and RFID Bureau of AICTE. She was an editorial secretary of the Journal of Current Biosciences. She is also a life member of the Journal of Placrosism. She was worked in the private sector before joining the government job as a commercial executive in Hyderabad. She completed her PhD in Calcutta University in the year 2002. She has published around 20 research papers and books in various renowned journals. She completed her PG and UG from Jodhpur University with very good academic background. She has delivered excellent talks in various webinars on topics such as Industry 4.0 enabled technical education, how to write winnable research proposals, higher education in India, challenges and opportunities, and orientation session on National Education Policy, NEP 2020, and many more. She has been invited as a chief guest in various colleges and universities in India. We are very much excited to have you for the session. Welcome, madam.
Thank you, ma'am. No person was ever honored for what he received. Honor has been the reward of what he gave. We as SRM IST Ramapuram fraternity is highly privileged to honor you virtually, ma'am.
Good evening to all. 3-day virtual international conference on accelerating global higher education in the VUCA Prime World is organized by SRM IST Ramapuram campus from December 1 to 3, 2021. My heartiest congratulations to the organizers. My topic is higher education transformations for global competitiveness. Let me tell you a little of the history of education in India. When I was studying and most knew only 3 branches, science, arts, and commerce. In 1978, engineering colleges had just 5 branches, civil, mechanical, electrical, chemical, and electronics. But do you know our Indian schools were teaching 50 to 72 different vidyas before 1858? The system of Indian schools was destroyed by the British visionaries. The first school in England opened in 1811. At the time, India had 7,32,000 Indian schools. Let me tell you how our schools got closed. How did Indian school learning end? First, let me tell you what disciplines were taught in Indian culture. Most Indian schools taught the following subjects: Agni Vidya, Metallurgy, Vayu Vidya, Wind, Jal Vidya, Water, Antariksha Vidya, Space Science, Prithvi Vidya, Environment, Surya Vidya, Solar Study, Chandra and Lok Vidya, Lunar Study, Megh Vidya, Weather Forecast, Dhatu Urja Vidya, Battery Energy, Din or Raat Vidya, Day and Night, Srishti Vidya, Space Research, Khagol Vidya, Astronomy, Bhugol Vidya, Geography, Kal Vidya, Time Studies, Bhugarb Vidya, geology and mining, gemstones and metals, Antariksha Vidya, gravity, Prakash Vidya, energy, Sanchar Vidya, communications, Viman Vidya, plane, Jalyan Vidya, water vessels, Agni Shastra Vidya, arms and ammunition, Jiva Vidya, Vidya, biology, zoology, botany, Yakya Vidya, material sciences. This is the talk of scientific education now. Let's talk about the professional and technical disciplines that were Vyapar Vidya, commerce, Krishi Vidya, agriculture, Pashu, Akshipalan, bird keeping, Ratnakar, gems and jewelry designing, Kumhar Vidya, pottery, Laghu, metallurgy and blacksmith, Takkas, Ranga Vidya, dyeing, Katwar, Rajukar, logistic, Vastukar Vidya, architecture, Khana Banani ki Vidya, cooking, cookery, Vahan Vidya, driving, waterways management, indicators, data entry, Kaushala manager, animal husbandry, Bhagwani, horticulture, Vanavidya, forestry, Sahayogi, covering paramedics. All this education was taught in school, but with time, when school disappeared, this knowledge was made to disappear by the British. How did school culture end in India? The Introduction in Convent Education to Indian Education Act was formed in 1835, revised in 1858. It was drafted by Lord Macaulay. Macaulay conducted a survey of education system in India, while many Britishers had given their reports about India's education system. One of the British officers was G.W. Luther, and another was Thomas Munro. Both of them had surveyed different areas at different times. Luther, who surveyed North India, Uttar Bharat, wrote that there is 97% literacy here, and Munro, who surveyed South India, Dakshin Bharat, wrote that there is 100% literacy. Macaulay had clearly said that if India, Bharat, is to be enslaved forever, its indigenous and cultural education system must be completely demolished and replaced with English education system. Only then will Indians be physically Indians, but mentally become English. When they leave the convent schools or high university, English universities, they will work in the interest of British. Let me quote Macaulay using an idiom. Just as a farm is thoroughly plowed before a crop is planted, so must it be plowed and brought in the English education system. That's why he first declared schools illegal when he declared Sanskrit. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. You're audible, ma'am.
Let me quote Macaulay using an idiom. Just as a farm is thoroughly plowed before a crop is planted, so must it be plowed and brought to English education system. That's why he declared schools illegal, then he declared Sanskrit illegal and set the schools on fire, beat the teachers in it and put them in jail. Till 1850, there were 732,000 schools and 750,000 villages in India, meaning almost every village had a school, and all these schools used to be higher learning institutes in today's language. 18 subjects were taught in all of them, and these people of schools used to run this together, not by the king. Education was imparted free. Schools were abolished and the English education was legalized. The first government school opened in Calcutta. That time it was called Free School. Under this law, Calcutta University, Bombay University, and Madras University was created. These three slavery era universities are still in the country. Macaulay had written a letter to his father. It's a very famous letter. In it, he writes, "These convent schools will bring out children who look like Indians, but are English by brain and they don't know anything about the country. They won't know anything about the culture. They won't have any idea about the tradition. They will not know the idioms. When such children are there in this country, even when British go away, English will not leave this country." Macaulay's document, it said British policy on a pathway that eventually had a determined impact on the context and methodology of what has been and is being taught in Indian educational institutions. the medium of instruction through which these have been and continue to be taught. It was explicit by the imperial purpose behind education. The truth of the letter written at the time is clearly visible in our country even today. A society that is cut off from its mother tongue never flourishes. And this was Macaulay's strategy. Today, our youth The truth of the letter written at the time is clearly visible in a country even today. A society that is cut off from its mother tongue never flourishes. And this was Macaulay's strategy. Today's youth here knows more about English than India, considers Indian culture not so cool, but imitates Western country. What a pity. By the end of 19th century, educated Indians actively endeavor to reshape programs and agenda of higher education. It would be fair to say that urgency for radical transformation of all aspects of education has gained wide acceptance. It has also become very evident that the massive transformation that we want to see in society as a whole, as well as in other technology sectors, by the beginning of 19th century, two large structures for higher education emerged in Europe. These were the German University of Teaching and Research and the French model of Grand Écoles or specialized technical institution. Both models catered to the demands of an emerging industrial civilization. Both were amalgamation of a culture of techno-science strung together by ties between universities, research institutes, and industrial research laboratories centers. By the 20th century, hybrids of these two models shaped the educational landscape of nations across the globe, leading to emergence of research and teaching university in which a humanist education was nurtured side by side with specialized professional institutes, which was to impart value-free domain-specific knowledge. A second seemingly binary was between formal knowledge imparted by university and applied knowledge transmitted from the technical schools. This separation provided impetus for innovation and developing during first and second industrial revolutions. However, during information biotechnology-based revolutions since the late 20th century, irreversible change in the models of the product of and in the regimes of knowledge production and consumption has emerged. The changes in the social character of techno-scientific knowledge are further exemplified in the efforts of international agencies like UNESCO to grasp and reorient the changing relationship between science and state. So it has become imperative to enlist indigenous knowledge systems, whether classical or popular, into the traditional curriculum of institutions of higher education. In India, the NEP 2020 is initiated. Ministry of Education has announced the National Education Policy 2020 NEP on 29th of July 2020. Improving the quality of education across all levels from primary to university level is a continuous and an ongoing process. Several initiatives are currently being undertaken in the direction. NEP 2020 recognizes that the vocational education is perceived to be inferior to mainstream education. And this policy aims to overcome the social status hierarchy associated with vocational education and requires integration of vocational education program into mainstream. Towards the secondary school will also collaborate with ITIs, polytechnic, and social industry, etc. Skill labs will also be set up and created in the schools in a hub and spoke model, which will allow other schools to use the facility. Am I audible? Yes. In higher education, various schemes, namely Rashtriya Uchitkar Shiksha Abhiyan, RUSA, scheme promotion of academic and research collaborations, PAR, Global Initiative for Academic Network GYAN, impacting research, innovation, and technology, Imprint, Technical Education Quality Improvement Program, TICU, Swayam, National Digital Library of India and ELI, Campus Connect CC Program, Uchitar Avishkar Abhiyan, UAY, Unnat Bharat Abhiyan, and impactful research in social sciences, IMPRES, are initiated. Let me tell you a little about TechUbe. Technical Education Quality Improvement Program is a project of Government of India assisted by World Bank. The project was implemented to improve the quality of education in the technical institutions of India. SWAYAM is a acronym for Study Web of Active Learning for Young Aspiring Minds. SWAYAM scheme, which means self-reliant in Sanskrit. It's an Indian massive open online course MOOC. The Government of India has initiated and designed this scheme, which aims to make learning available to all. Course categories include engineering, science, management, humanities, language, mathematics, commerce, arts and recreation, general library and education. The scheme is designed to achieve three primary principles of education policy, that is access, quality, and equity. The Ministry of Education and NPTEL IIT Madras, with the help of Google Inc. and the Persistent System Limited, had developed this scheme. NDLI is the acronym of National Digital Library of India. 19th June 2018 marked a milestone in the history of education in India with the formal launch of National Digital Library of India by then Honorable Minister of HRD Prakash Javadekar. National Digital Library of India is a national mission of education through information and communication technology NMEICT project developed by the Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur, under the aegis of Ministry of Human Resource Development, Government of India, presently Ministry of Education. It is a single window platform providing learning resources that make e-learning education accessible to all, bringing to users all the demographics, digital repositories from India and the world. Campus Connect program Infosys launched the Campus Connect program in 2004. There is a focus industry academia program that aims to reduce the skill gap that grassroots academic interventions. This is a holistic program that covers the entire academic ecosystem, students, faculty, and curriculum development. The program aims to deepen the industry academic relationship and create a strong foundation for the emerging knowledge economy in India. The nationwide program focuses on aligning the needs of engineering colleges, the faculty and students with needs of the industry, thus preparing an industry-ready professionals. Infosys invested $10 crores in this program. UOY's Uchitar Avishkar Abhiyan was announced on a order that directly impacts the need of the industry and thereby improves the competitive academic collaboration where the industry shares a part of the cost of research. Of late, top business houses have set up skill training centers that link socially and economically disadvantaged to a livelihood. In addition to technical and domain knowledge, these centers help with interpersonal and communication skills and offer IT modules too. Tata Trust has set its skill development initiative, Tata Strive, which has already held 7.5 in the year 2022. Mahindra Pride School have trained 42,000 students with 90-day courses in IT-enabled services, retail, hospital, and QSR auto sectors. The schools have trained 42,000 students with 90-day courses on IT-enabled services. The schools had 100% placement before pandemic, and 65 students were recruited by UD Trucks in Japan for rupees 1 lakh per month. Unnat Bharat Abhiyan, another program, is inspired by the vision of transformational changes in rural development processes by leveraging knowledge institution to help students the architecture of an inclusive India. IMPRES, Impact Research in Social Sciences. It aims to encourage social science research in policy relevant areas so as to provide vital inputs in policy formulation, implementation, and evaluation. IMPRES is an initiative of Ministry of Education, Government of India, being implemented by the Indian Council of Social Science Research. Basic idea to encourage policy research in social sciences is to have visible impact on polity, economy, society, culture, media, governance, health, environment, technology, law. It also aims to have enhanced coordination between academics and policymakers. The identified domain under IMPRES are STEM, state and democracy, urban transformation, media culture and society, employment skills and rural transformation, governance, innovation and public policy, growth, macro trade and economic polity, agriculture and rural development, health and environment, science and education, social media and technology, politics, law and economics. Imprint is impacting research, innovation, technology. The another program adopting engineering and technology as a vehicle to address the social needs, a catalytic scheme as a pan-Indian initiative coordinated by Ministry of Human Resource Development, presently Ministry of Education. The program builds around the great research talent and highly equipped and promising infrastructure of the Indian Institutes of Technology and the Indian Institute of Science. With an aim to achieving inclusion, the program is currently also encompassed the centrally funded technical institutions and in future is poised to cover the entire academic and research institutions of the country. Imprint has been coordinated by IAC, 16 IITs, 25 ministries, signed a MOU for promoting research under Imprint. The initiative now enjoys the funding support of over 25 ministries, departments, and councils of the central government for identified projects. The number is growing further and is doing so laying a firm, long-term foundation for the initiative. ARIA and RF are ranking institutional innovation achievements, National Institute ranking framework, implemented to improve the quality of higher education. A number of initiatives are also undertaken by UGC and ACT for quality improvement in higher technical educations. NEP 2020 unequally endorses and envisions a substantial increase in public investment in education by the central government and all state governments. The center and the state will work together to increase the public investment in education sector to reach 6% of GDP at the earliest. The education reforms are focusing on how to make education more universal in the country and more inclusive. In a post-pandemic scenario, the trend is towards higher adoption of technology and systems so as to not only be the disruption better, but also raise the standards of learning outcomes. I shall now dwell on international link-up initiatives in education and NEP 2020. Global Initiative for Academic Network GYAN. Union Cabinet has approved a program titled Global Initiative for Academic Networks in Higher Education aimed at tapping the talent pool of scientists and entrepreneurs internationally to encourage their engagement with institutes of higher education in India so as to augment the country's existing academic resources, accelerate the pace of quality reform, and elevate India's scientific and technological capacity to global excellence. GYAN is envisioned to catalyze higher education institutions in the country, and it will initially include IITs, IIMs, Central Universities, IIS Bangalore, IICR, NITs, IITs. Subsequently cover Good State University, where the spin-off is FAST. GYAN is an evolving scheme which will initially include participation of foreign faculty institution as distinguished or adjunct or visiting or faculty or professors of practice, etc., to participate in delivering short semester-long courses. Other activities will be included in due course. To start with, initially with 12 sectional committees in the following areas: physical science, chemical, biochemical and material sciences, mathematical and computer sciences, life sciences, medicine and healthcare, electronics, electrical, information and communication technology, mechanical sciences and infrastructure, earth and environment sciences, management, social sciences and law, humanities and liberal arts, architecture, design, planning and heritage, other categories, interdisciplinary categories, other areas can be included in future and the sections can be reorganized if needed. The other scheme is SPARK, the Scheme for Promotion of Academic Research Collaboration. The Scheme for Promotion of Academic Research and Collaboration aims at improving the research ecosystem of Indian higher education institute by facilitating academic and research collaboration between Indian institutions and the best institutes in the world from 28 selected nations to jointly solve the problem of national and international relevance. The scheme proposes to enable productive academic cooperation by supporting the following critical components that can catalyze impact, making research, namely visits and long-term stay of top international faculty or researchers in Indian institution to pursue teaching and research, visits by Indian students for training and experimentation in premium laboratories worldwide, joint development of unique courses, world-class books and monographs, translatable patents, demonstrable technologies, or action research outcomes and products, consolidation of bilateral cooperation through academic and research partnership, through indoor workshops in India, publication, dissemination, and visibility, through a high-profile annual international conference in India. The expected outcomes include tangible results in terms of large quantity of high quality research publications, solution to key national and international problems, development of Nikkei courses, high quality textbooks and research monograph, imbibing best of practices from top international academicians and researchers, strong bilateral cooperation, and improved world card reputation and ranking of Indian institutions. Similarly, UGC and AICT have schemes to international collaboration. Governments in many nations are wrestling with the question of whether competition at home improves competitiveness abroad and which combination of competition with collaboration will deliver the best results. As a consequence, most governments recognize a relationship with the education of those who enter the workplace in the long-term economic competitiveness. Accordingly, the global digital economy requires advanced education, forcing colleges and universities to move from more formal traditional role to teaching and learning to redefine the institutional mission to include innovation, entrepreneurship, creativity, and marketing. The last 2 years have been extremely difficult for the Indian schools. There's a need to reimagine the purpose of education. Education, other than providing employment, should also aim towards making the country and the world a better place to live. The last 2 years have been extremely difficult. After the break of COVID-19 pandemic, the importance of general health, nutrition, and therapeutics have globally recognized, which has resulted in unprecedented growth of pharmaceuticals and biotech industry across the country. Indian pharma industry has been steadily growing with a CAGR of more than 10%. India has become the prime pharmacy capital of the world and has been enjoying the success of producing the quality genetic medicine for the domestic use and export use. We Indians believe in Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. And with the collaborative efforts of the scientists all over the world have come up within a year with a vaccine to combat the deadly COVID-19. Never in human history, the world has stood together and worked tirelessly to come up with a vaccine in such a short time. Indeed, it's a commendable achievement by the scientists and pharmacists of the world. The distribution of vaccine to the needy nations was initiated by India. The current age is one of the profound changes that happens once in an era. The digital age is changing everything around us. It was defined politics, the economy, the society. It's raising new questions on sovereignty, governance, and law. It is reshaping international competition, power, and leadership. But we also face new risks and new forms of conflicts across diverse threats from seabed to cyber to space. Our higher education today faces its greatest combination of challenges: pandemic uncertainty, accountability, and emerging technologies that are daunting to learn and intimidating to implement. VUCA accurately describes this complex, evolving and dynamic environment confronted by global higher education. Therefore, global higher education institutes are attempting to develop the capacity to adapt and modify the new models of knowledge, information, and change. So we need a paradigm shift in education to empower students for the present time. Some technologies of the future relating to machine augmented cognition and personalized virtual teachings are promising areas of blue sky research. Education customized to individual talents and preferences will lead to all sorts of creativity and innovation, resulting in greater self-actualization as well as concrete social benefits. My special thanks to Dr. Ashokan, Conference Secretary and Vice Principal Academics, HS, HRM ISD Ramapuram, Chennai, and Dr. Murugan for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you.
To give me an opportunity to interact with you all. Thanks to all.
Thank you. Thank you very much, madam. Thank you very much. I extend a very hearty thanks to today's guest speakers, Mr. Lachen McKinnon and Mr. Raja P. Armugam and Mr. Sridharan Sambat and Dr. Uma Raghunathan for today's sharing their excellent experience and with us today would benefit our future endeavors. Thank you very much, madam. Thank you very much, all the participants. So tomorrow, again, second, same time, 6:32, we can start this day second conference continues tomorrow evening also. So once I thank everyone, my organizers, my committee people, and all the participants who have the patience to listen to this. We believe that it's a great learning for every participants. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Very good night. Thank you. Thank you, madam. Thank you very much, madam. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.